Just when you think that people cannot get any more creative on how to take another person's life, this stuff happened. Now, due to the nature of these videos, viewer discretion is advised as well as trigger warning. So our story begins with 39-year-old Jennifer Goodwill Yost and her husband 34-year-old Christopher Yost and their daughter/stepdaughter 17-year-old Katlyn Goodwill. Now, both Jennifer and Katlyn were part of the furry community. If you don't know what furries are, in layman's terms, they're people that like to dress up like animals. Now, Jennifer, she was like the mom of the community, where she was a person that everybody leaned on whenever they had an issue going on, and she would help them cope through those issues. Katlyn was also part of the community in which her persona went by the name of, and you cannot make this up, Daydreamer Foxwolf. Now, during a certain time of the year, the furry community would come together and do conventions. It was at this convention where both Jennifer and Katlyn had met 25-year-old Frank Felix, in which his persona was a dragon in which he went by the name Entei, in which they also met 21-year-old Joshua Acosta, in which he was known as Brawny. The reason why he got that name was because he was a man that was a fan of My Little Pony. It was said that when Frank had met Katlyn, it was love at first sight, in which they both developed a romantic relationship. Now, this went on for a while until both Jennifer and Christopher found out about the relationship. And when the two parents discovered the relationship, they went ahead and ended it immediately because they felt that Frank should not be with Katlyn due to the fact that Katlyn was still underage. Even though the relationship ended, both Katlyn and Frank stayed in contact with each other. It had got to a point that Frank became obsessive over Katlyn. Frank would write her saying that she was the one and only thing that ever made him happy, and that he wanted to live happily ever after with her without parental interference. And so what Katlyn would do was she would go ahead and tell Frank a secret that she'd been holding all this time. So Katlyn would go ahead and tell Frank that her stepfather Christopher has been essaying her on a weekly basis, starting from the age of 7 all the way up to the age of 15. Now Frank, after hearing all this, felt like he had to do something because he was her knight in shining armor. So he would call up his friend Joshua Acosta, who was a private first class in the army. He was stationed over at Fort Irwin, in which he worked as a mechanic, in which the two came up with a plan to help Katlyn get away from her parents until she turned 18. So on the morning of September 24th of 2016, Katlyn would wait for everybody to fall asleep in the house before she sent a text over to Frank to let him know that the plan was on. So Frank would go ahead and pick up Joshua and they would head over to Katlyn's house. The two men would go to the house, in which Joshua got the vehicle, go and knock on the door, let Katlyn know that they was there, in which Katlyn would let Joshua in after he asked can use the bathroom. So Katlyn would go out to the vehicle with all her stuff and wait for Joshua to come out. And then once Joshua came back out, Frank would go ahead and drive him back to the base, and then Frank would go ahead and drive back to his residence. Now everything seemed to be fine until later on that morning, in which police were called to a California residence, and when they got there, they saw a scene that no child should ever see. Because that morning, the 911 dispatcher had got a call from a 6 and 9-year-old saying that their parents were no longer alive. They had told the dispatcher they found their mom in the bedroom and their dad was in the backyard. And when the police had got there, they had found it wasn't just 2 people, it was actually 3 people that was unalived. And after surveying the scene, they found that everybody was accounted for except for one person. And that person was Katlyn Goodwill. So they would put out a bolo or be on the lookout for Katlyn because they couldn't know if she was kidnapped or just missing. So police were searched for Katlyn, in which they ended up finding her the very next day. So when police had found Katlyn, they would go ahead and question her and let her know that her parents were no longer alive, which ended up shocking Katlyn because when she left the house, her parents were still alive. So she would tell police that she had left that morning with both Frank and Joshua. Police would go ahead and bring in both Frank and Joshua in to be interviewed. So while police were questioning Joshua, he would go ahead and confess to everything that he did. So when police asked him why he did this, he would say that the family was a festering wound that needed to be cauterized. He also confessed to police that Katlyn had told him what her stepfather was doing to her, and that her mother was also abusing her by allowing it to happen. So he would tell police that him and Frank been coming up with this plan for over a week. Joshua had told police that him and Frank had bought earplugs, bolt cutters, and shotgun ammunition at a store over in Burbank, California. He also told police that he was the one that volunteered to do the deed. Joshua said that on the morning of the murders, both him and Joshua had got a text message from Katlyn with a plus sign saying that their plan to come pick her up was a go. Joshua said that when he got there, he would walk up to the door, knock on it, in which Katlyn would let him in. He had told her that she was going to talk to her parents to let them know that they were taking her. So Katlyn would grab her stuff, run out to the vehicle, and sit there and wait while Joshua walked into the house. Joshua said that when he walked into the house, he saw 28-year-old Arthur Boucher sleeping on the couch. He would walk up to Arthur while he was sleeping, pull a shot that belongs to Frank's father, aim it at him, and then pull the trigger. And then once he did that, he would walk over to Jennifer's room, saw that she was sleeping, and then put one between her eyes. He would then state after he had shot Jennifer, he had noticed that Christopher was trying to run out the back door, in which he would follow him and then shoot him in his own backyard. And then Josh said after he was done, he would run out to the vehicle, in which Frank would take him back to the base, and then Frank would go ahead and drive back to his place, and that's when they started destroying evidence such as their cell phones and burning their clothes. So when police asked them why did he take out Arthur, Joshua would say that the reason why is because Arthur was just collateral damage. Joshua also even stated that the reason why he did all this was because even though they took Katyln out the household, there was still 2 other girls living in that house. And that he didn't want them to go through the same thing that Katyln went through, because just because Katyln was gone, he felt that Chris was going to target them next. So he decided to take out everybody in the household. And so when they asked him, did anybody else know what he was going to do, he said that everybody that's part of the plan knew about it. So police would go ahead and question Frank, in which Frank tried to deny everything, saying that he didn't do anything. The only thing he did was that he went to go pick up Katyln, and that they went back to his house. But then the police went ahead and revealed that Joshua told him everything. So Frank would go ahead and admit to what he did, as well as turn over all the emails that him and Joshua sent to one another. Frank even revealed that he knew there was going to be a 3rd person at the house, but he still went ahead with the plan. Frank even told police that he knew that the other children were in the house as well, and that he was planning on leaving them food after they finished doing the deed. And here's the kicker. They even found an email that Frank had wrote to an acquaintance saying that he was going to partake into a murder. And so this acquaintance tried to talk him out of it, saying that it's not worth it, in which Frank would say, "Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm actually going hunting." Now, when police would go ahead and question Katyln, she would turn on both Frank and Joshua by saying that they forced her to do all this. Katyln would go ahead and tell police that she knew that he became obsessed with her when they went to a convention and he was there. He got upset over the fact that she was talking to somebody that was around her age, in which Frank would force himself on Katyln by telling her that if she didn't do it, then he would go ahead and tell her mom everything that she had told him. She even told police that on the morning of the murders that she had went out to the car and was scared for her life because she had saw that Frank had a gun in the car, and that she didn't learn that her parents were unalive until after police had contacted her. So at that point, all 3 were arrested: Katyln, Joshua, and Frank. Now here's the messed up part. They have granted Katyln immunity if she testified at Joshua's hearing. Now, during Joshua's trial, his defense lawyer would make Katyln acknowledge that she lied about everything, including the fact that she lied about the abuse. They even brought up text messages that Katyln had wrote to a friend saying that she didn't want her parents alive. Now, Katyln would say that when she wrote those messages, she was just role-playing, and that was part of her persona. Now, Joshua's lawyer would say that Katyln manipulated him into committing the murders, but the courts didn't see it that way. So on December 14th of 2018, Joshua was sentenced to life in prison without parole. That wasn't until this year when Frank Felix had went on trial for the murders, in which Frank lawyers would state that he was just someone that was trying to help a girl get away from her parents, and that he had no idea that Joshua was going to kill her parents. But despite all the evidence against him that proved that he knew everything that was going on, Frank was found guilty on November 12th of 2024 on 3 counts of murder and 3 felony enhancements of murder. His sentencing date is set for January 17th of 2025, where he's looking at life in prison without parole. And Katyln, who set everything up, she pretty much got immunity for everything, so she is still free. So what do you think? Do you feel that all 3 of them should have been charged with murder? And you feel that it's fair that Katyln had got immunity for everything that she did? I'd like to hear what you think, so go ahead and put your comment down below. And if you like hearing true crime stories like this, stay tuned for more videos to come. And if you're new, go ahead and check out my other videos that you may like. So with that, hug your kids, call your mom, and have a great day.